Now I can shrink the YouTube down. I'm back. All right, welcome back, everybody. I got it together, and I am so ready to get into this conversation with you all. And so, I want to talk about again. We are going to hit the con. Let me shrink this out again. Let me hold on just a second. Make sure you check your tabs. Yeah, let me there you go. Let me mute that conversation. Let me mute that conversation. Okay. Now, I want to get back into this conversation about the immigration status and just what is exactly going on in New York, um, and the immigration and how it's going to be affecting us as a whole, and how should we economically, socially be able to come together as a people unitedly and help resolve a solution. Now, I don't know if anybody has heard of this so far, but 50 Cent has contacted the mayor of New York, and he's reached out with $53 million to help at least 500 million families with a food program to help with food and diapers. And then he's also um, asking the mayor exactly what's going on, because his humanitarian, as a humanitarian, he's trying to bring resolution to the problem. And so we know that with 50 Cent being one of the most wealthiest um, people in the world, that takes a big person to be able to step up and reach down into his pockets. Now we know many people in such statuses have made moves like that when cries in the world come out, have come out and been heard like that, but we've never heard that kind of move been made on one person's shoulder for so many in need. So I want to say that, much myrrh and love to 50 Cent, for reaching out, not just saying what's going on, Mayor, but to extend so much to so many, you know, that says a lot. And so um, he's attacking a problem, he's sharing love to a problem, and he's trying to extend and give a solution to help out to a problem. And so we're trying to say, we hear you, we see you, and we're trying to help out and do our share. And so we thank you again. And so, what can we do from the outside looking in? And so, I want to take a look at, again, peace to the chat and peace to you again, New Beginning Hits. I thank you again, you and Gemini, the goddess, for being here. And I welcome everybody again for supporting and coming and joining in on the chat. I'm going to drop a link. So if you want to come in and come on the panel and sit down and be able to discuss this and join me, by all means, you're more than welcome. Um, Let me be able to grab the link for you, as well as pull up my first bit of information too. So Let me go into not there. Mm. All right, let me see. Um, and where do I paste this? I how you do that? I don't even know how. Copy invitation. Paste it. Oh, oh. What do you do with that? Oh no, that's too much. I don't know how to do that. Ha ha! I need help. Let me see. Go to the chat, and then I can invite. Paste it. Oh, that's too much. I know that ain't it. This is ridiculous. Listen here. Let's cancel that. Let's exit out that. Let's go back to that. All right, let me start up this video. So let's start with the new humanitarian. So this is why these 10 humanitarians cry out to demand our attention now. Now, the aides need to continue and uncheck for the hotspots, and none of these are from the Ukraine. And the reason why they're saying the Ukraine is because we know that that's from Russia. Okay, so the fixation was on the Russian war in Ukraine, and it makes it even more important than the usual in the years to remember is that many other crises or less in the geopolitical political importance is that they're too easily forgotten by the media and the neglected aids of donors. Now, according to the latest figures, some 339 million people in the 69 countries will require humanitarian assistance in 2023. Now, this report is also from 2023. I believe it was in January, but we also know that this is an annual report. So it might have came out, yes, it came out in January of 2023. And the numbers are again recorded again annually. So the annual number came from this report was from the ending of December 2023, and these annual numbers were calculated from that ending of January, beginning of January 2023, and then the reports following after are going to be either from January 2023 and or the ending of December 2023, moving forward to January 2024. So, according to the figures from 339 million people in the 69 countries will require humanitarian assistance in 2023. Now, within the UN appealing for an increase of 25% of the funding compared to last year, when responses were already only half met. Now, this is according to January's report. So, this is from the last quarter and from the annual report. Now, only as a newsroom specialties covering humanitarian crises around the globe, and only having the report from more than 60 of the countries last year, the new humanitarian has identified the following 10 emergencies and demand extra attention in 2023. Now, tens of millions of affected people in these countries have already living without enough food or in extreme danger. Access restraints mean some can't be reached, while widening gaps between the needs of donor funding will see many others go without assistance. Now, let's go back. These are 10 humanitarian crises that demand our attention. One of the areas is the Horn of Africa. The reason is the drought and the conflict both combined. More than 36 million drought affected across Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. Now, with that being said, we know that the Horn of Africa is enduring a drought over 40 years, and the situation only set to deteriorate. Now, with that, we can know that it's the worst affected country with famine, catastrophic food shortages, and it projects over 100,000 people between April and June, and 8.3 million expected to go hungry in total. Okay, now they said that a vast number have already estimated to have died. Right, while peace still deals with the neighboring Ethiopia between federal administration and the Tigrerian forces have mainly hurdles still to overcome. I also dropped this link in the chat. Another one is Syria. It records that it needs attention wanes. This is 6.8 million internally displaced and 15.3 million people in need. Again, this is from the annual report. And it says more than 11 years of war, Syria has fallen out of the headlines, but the UN says more people than ever before, 5.3 million, still need some sort of aid this year, and around 6.8 million Syrians remain internally displaced. Now, the condition on a fragile UN Security Council resolution, much of the new need is tied to a crippling economic crisis, which saw food prices rise 532% between 2020 and 2022, and the record levels of hunger, severe water shortage, and a contribute to a cholera outbreak and worsening food crisis. And war still isn't over. The Democratic Republic of Congo, the return of M23. Numbers of 27 million, around a quarter of the population, need aid. It says the return of the long dormant M23 armed group has the deepening humanitarian needs in the eastern. Peace to everyone in the chat. It says it returned the armed group has deepening the humanitarian needs in eastern DRC and triggered a geopolitical crisis that could set off a wider proxy conflict in the Great Lakes region. The Rwanda supported rebel group is promised to withdraw from positions captured in the recent months, but the situation remains volatile, and hundreds of thousands of displaced people need urgent support. The East African force have arrived to a population very of outward meddling, while the UN blue helmets are faced public ire for their perceived inaction, and the attention of the M23 has pulled focus away from other insurgent groups, including the Islamic Allied Democratic Forces and the Inturi-based Codic militaries. I guess that's a military. Um, but it says we are likely wreaking more havoc in 2023. The Myanmar is a forgotten but escalating conflict where 1.3 million internally displaced. This is 130. This is 130,000 people that live in interment camps. In the first week of January, the fight in Karen State displaced more than 10,000 people. Such have grown in common areas across the Myanmar, which were indiscriminated attacks by the notorious brutal Tamar. I'm sorry, y'all. The Tatmadaw armed forces have seen more than 1.1 million displaced since the military power took over in February of 2001. We also have Haiti, the soaring needs of a security vacuum. This is 5.2 million, nearly half the population needs food and aid. And they said that Haiti is wrestling with a string of overlapping crises: famine, levels of hunger, extreme gang violence, cholera, cholera, and things may be getting worse before they get better. January began with a sobering reality. The Caribbean country has no more remaining elected officials. Then they said the Sahel, spreading jaundice and in surgeries. 14.4 million are in need across the Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. 22.3 million internally displaced, over 7,000 schools non-functioning. Civilian death and humanitarian needs hit for a new high in Burkina Faso and Mali last year, and the indicators could worsen again in 2023 as jaundice expands in their territory across the region. Two military coups in 12 months have driven instability in Burkina Faso, while Gardner Group's mercenaries were involved in a heinous abuse in the Mali, and the France ended its unpopular mission. Niger is faring slightly better. Its government has exposed a weakening to talk to with the jihadists. That's what it is, jihadists. So it's not jaundice, it's jihadists. I'm sorry. But militants are still well enriched. Some frontline Sahelian communities have launched their own dialogues with jihadists to try to ease the violence, but PACs have proved unable to halt the overall downward spiral. And jihadists is now spreading south and targeting coastal countries, including Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. So again, I'm sorry, it wasn't jaundice, it's jihadists. This is a gang. Afghanistan AIDS cuts grows hunger and women are at risk. 28.3 million people, that's 2/3 of the population that needs aid. Again, we can go into Israel, Palestine. It's an intractable conflict that grows deadlier. This is 2.1 million people in need of AIDS. 61% live in Gaza. Last year was the deadliest in the decade for the Palestinians, which occupied the West Bank, including Jerusalem, with Israel and forces killing 146 Palestinians. Many of these deaths took place during the regular army raids that began after the wave of the attacks of Palestinians between March and May that killed 19 people inside the West Bank as 2023 began, and there is no sign of the wave of violence, which included an increase of shelter attacks in several days. In several days from the Gaza and Israel strikes. Then we have Venezuela crisis and flukes with the border policy change of xenophobia grows. Now, this number around 7 million Venezuelans, 1 in 4 need AIDS due to the most of the 5.9 million refugees and migrants in the region. 2023 looks back at a dynamic year for about 13 million Venezuelans requiring emergency aid within the outside of the country. In 2022, saw the number heading for the U.S. southern border soared and many others on treacherous routes. A recent change in the U.S. immigration policy looks like a reverse to trend in 2023, leaving thousands of stranded in Mexico and many more struggling to build new lives in host countries closer to home, where harsh economic realities are making it harder to find work, driving exophonic rhetoric, improving relationships between New Colombia, President Gustavo Petro, and the Venezuelan counterparts. I'm sorry, y'all. Many lives remain hostage in the economic stagnation, food and fuel shortages, and a shattered healthcare system, where some refugees are returning and the future at home remains difficult and uncertain. Then you have South Sudan unraveling peace and massive floodings, and this is 9.4 million people in need of aid, and 76% of the population, and 2.2 million international. I'm sorry, in, inter, I'm sorry, internet. I'm so sorry. Internally displaced, and 2.3 million are refugees. Now, with that, this is simply forming a unity government in 2023, but the fueling elites, and then they're addressing local grievances, producing a larger scale of conflict in this countryside, and it's becoming an increasing hard shell. And the experts say that it's a flawed piece in the agreement, and it has worsened the situation. And it's dealing with the only real game in this town for the international community, and more conflicts seem inevitable. And this year, the situation for the upper Nile of the state, particularly, is a concern. And the impact of the 4 consecutive years of the mass flooding will be felt too, as hunger reaches levels unseen, even during the devastation between 2013 through 2018 civil war. Now, these are the things, according to the new humanitarian, that has led up to the crisis from, we're going to say, from 2013 to 2018 up until now. And again, this is an annual report, and we're going to take it from ending of 2023, 2022 to January of 2023. It started and it ended about December of 2023. So moving forward from this report, we have to see just exactly where did it go from there. So it took us to January's 2024 employment status. Now, I tried to see if I could, I'm sorry, I tried to see if I could find someone uh, to help out with the employment situation dealing with this because, again, um, we know that they're trying to get into asylum and they're trying to seek jobs. So, in trying to seek jobs, we know that there's so many jobs that we can have. So, taking a deeper look in, we have to look deeper in. So, how many jobs are there available in a state? And we know that all these people right now are uh, squished up in New York, let's say, and then we got to try to expedite them and delegate them to other states to see where we can find employment for people. All right. So we have a total non-foreign payroll employment, and it rose, they say, to 353,000 jobs, let's say, in January, and the unemployment rate remained at 3.7% in the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics that reported, and this again is an annual report for January. Um, and this was reported in January. So job gains occurred professionally in the business service and healthcare, retail trade, social assistance. Now the employment declined in the mining quarry and oil and gases extraction industry. So this is where jobs increased on one end and it decreased in another end. So in manufacturing, retail, trade, it declined, but then in healthcare services, business services, and retail services, it inclined. All right. Now, it says that in the news release, it presents statistics from 2 monthly surveys. The household surveys measures labor forces statistics, inclining unemployment by demographic characteristics, and it establishes surveys to measure non-farm employment hours and earnings by industries. And for more information about the concepts and statistics methodology used in the two surveys, you have to see the technical notes. Now, for the household survey, they go by unemployment. In January, the unemployment rate was 3.7. For the third month in a row, the numbers of the unemployment people was little to change at 6.1 million. It says you can go to table A. Among the major worker groups, the unemployment rate in adult men was 3.6%. Adult women was 3.2%. Teenagers was 10.6%. Then it goes into ethnic groups. They say the white was 3.4%, blacks was 5.3%, Asians was 2.9%, Hispanics was 5.0%, and it showed little to no change. And in January, we can go to the tables. It said the number of long-term unemployment, those jobs for 27 weeks or more were at 1.3 million, was little change in January. The long-term unemployment accounts were at 20.8% in all unemployment people. The labor force participant rate was at 6.2%, was unchanged in January, and an employment population ratio was at 60.2%, was little change. Now, these measures show little to no change over the year. So, over the year, the employment ratio remained a little over the median, right? And then the labor force rate was unchanged in January, a little over the median. So this kind of says over the medium, over the year, at least half of the world was working. A little over half of the world was working. So do we see that as a fair trade, no robbery? Do we see that as the world balancing out? Is just almost a fair balance of just enough people working as it is poor? I just want to know, how are we looking at that as a balance off. It's just enough people employed as it is unemployed. It's just enough people um, working as it is unworking, but we also looking at long term and short term. We're looking at long part time. We're looking at full time, but we also have to ensure the part time hours are 36. Anything under 37.5 hours um, is considered part time. That's anything under 37.5 hours is considered part time. Anything over 37.5 hours is considered full time. So we have to look at all of these ratios before we can understand what is considered short term or part time and what is considered long time. We also have to consider what is the we have uh, 8/40. We have these different 12-hour shifts. We have seasonal hours. We These are all these things that we ratios and whatnot that you have to take into consideration to understand. You with seasonal jobs may pay a little more, but you work only during XYZ season. So these are all the things that you take in consideration when we are talking about these employment terms. Now, moving forward, it says in January, the number of people who were employed part time for economic reasons, this was at 4.4 million, and the change was little. These individuals would have preferred full time employment while we're working part time because their hours have been reduced where they were unavailable to find full time jobs. The number of people not in the labor force who currently want to work, 5.8 million, were little change in January. These individuals were not counted as employed because they were not actively looking for work during the 4 weeks preceding the survey who were unavailable to take a job. Again, we have to go back to Table A in this document. Along with these not working the labor force who wanted a job, the number of people marginally attached to the labor force, the change was little at 1.7 million in January. And these individuals were available for work and had looked for a job, and sometimes prior to the 12 months, but not looked for work in 4 weeks preceding the survey. The number of discouraged workers, a subset marginalized attached who believed that no work was available for them, increased to 452,000 in January. Now, the total of non-farm payroll employments rose by 353,000 in January, similar to the gain of 333,000 in December. The payroll employment increased by an average of 255,000 per month in January of 2023. And in January, job gains occurred in professional and business service, healthcare, retail trade, and social assistance. Employment declined in mining, quarry, and in oil and gas extraction industries. And then again, we have to refer to the notes, right? And this is about the annual benchmark process. The professional and business service added 74,000 jobs in January, considerably higher in the average monthly increase of 14,000 jobs in 2023. Over the month of professional, scientific, and technical services added 42,000 jobs. Employment temporarily health services changed little over the month, plus 4,000, but it is down by 408,000 since reaching the peak in March of 2022. Whew. Now, in the healthcare, it rose by $7,000, but it gained the ambulatory healthcare services plus 333,000 in hospitals, 20,000 in nurse care and residential care facilities, plus 17,000 jobs growth in healthcare, and 58,000 per month in 2023. In retail, the employment had grew 45,000 in January, but it showed little to no growth since earlier 2023. The general merchandise retails added up to 24,000 jobs, while electronic and appliance retailers lost 3,000 jobs. Employment and social assistance rose 30,000 jobs in January, reflecting continued growth in individual family services, plus 22,000 employment social services grew the average of 23 per month in 2023. Employment in manufacturing edged up to January plus 23,000 jobs, and gains in chemical manufacturing plus 7,000 in printing and related supportive services plus 5,000 in manufacturing experience with little net growth in 2023. The government employment continued to tend up in January for 36,000, below the average monthly gain of 57,000 in 2023. A job occurred in the federal government plus 11,000, and employment continued to trend up in the local government, excluding the 19,000 in education. Now, in January, the employment information included its upward 10 of plus 15,000, employment in motion pictures and sounding recording industries, including an increase by 12,000, while employment in telecommunications decreased by 3,000. In the mining, I'm gonna end with this. In the mining and the quarries and the oil and gas extractions, the industry declined by 5,000 in January, and little met no change in 2023. Over a month of lost jobs, supporting activities for mining, negative 7,000, were partially offset by job gain in oil and extractions, plus 2,000. Employment showed little change over the month in other major industries, including construction, wholesale, trade, transportation, and warehouse financing activities, leisures, hospitality, and other services. And then it goes into a whole chart. And this is where I wanted to see if I could have somebody to get into this part of the revision of the non-farming, and try to go over this economic part of this chart, because I don't want to tell nobody nothing wrong, to read the numbers, to get into that part so we can really go over the census. Now this report, it comes back out again, because again, I'm telling y'all, these reports come out annually, but this report is actually done in January, prior to, I want to say this is what they call a pre report or a post report, because they haven't done the actual numbers come out right around tax time. So this one is done before taxes is done, and then so they can get actual numbers. And then once they get actual numbers, this is after everything gets ran through, and they have these meetings and conversations, and then they come back to once they get the actual numbers. So I'm not actually sure. I'm seeing if I can go back over it kind of briefly, but they're going to come back and have another meeting and do a consensus. And the meeting is going to be held in November. Not November. They're going to hold one meeting in a couple of weeks from now, and then the final one is going to be in March. And then they're going to do the report, and then you're going to have the actual numbers of they're going to have the actual numbers of what was, if any, the jobs that are actually existing or non-existing, and if there is any deficit or profits in any jobs that exist. Because we have to, if the people are seeking not just asylum or refuge from the ongoing problems and situations that they came from, but they are going to need employment to help the situation from which they came. It's one thing to come from a situation to embetter yourself, but to come to a situation that can help you to get out of a situation and only increase your situation to a worser one is got to be more devastating. And so we need to look at that as a whole and not just look at them as saying that they came here to tear us down. I don't want to, we need to look at that as a whole. Sometimes we don't look at things and say we were there, or in that shoe. So I want to look at, um, I want us to look at exactly what is asylum, right? What does it have to do with asylum? What is this Title 42? They've been talking about Title 42, and what does it have to do with asylum? So Title 42 has been a lot on the news, and the images of migrants and those seeking asylum at the border, and often families and young people that populate on the TV screens and the media feeds, and the Title 42, and what does it have to do with people seeking asylum? Well, it serves as a health service act, and it helps to prevent, oh, well, it helps to prevent spreads of uh, uh, immune diseases and whatnot. But again, these people are seeking asylum. And so when it's used today, because they gave them, it stopped the spread of COVID, is what it's saying, pretty much, right? And so Trump did the administration to stop the antivirus of COVID and its policies. But this asylum thing has stopped in May, is what I'm trying to tell y'all. Is that why they trying to run it? The act was introduced in uh I believe it was in the early, what have you. Okay, let's go here. However, since Title 42 was invoked in March of 2020, the border agents turned away those seeking asylum in Mexico, the border, for more than 2 million times, including families with young children. This situation had forced people to go back to dangerous conditions, including Mexico, or return them to their countries where fled, putting their lives at risk. The policy has caused disappropriate, disproportionate harm to Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ, however you say that, asylum seekers, right? Um, but the law dropped in May of last year, right? Because it was created in 1944, and they restarted it back up in 2020. So the law is not even a law right now. I don't even know why we're making this big thing about asylum seekers and the Title 42. Reach out to the member of Congress for.
options are on the table, and yes, one of those options includes a new shelter here on Staten Island.
Instead of leaving it for cities and localities to handle.
We start tonight with New York City at a potential breaking point. We have been following the story, as you know, for months.
If they were running the city right now, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble.
NYC implements new measures. Mayor Adams of the Big Apple is doing a bit of a dance with Texas Governor Abbott over a hot potato called migrant transfers. Picture this. Texas is trying to send in a wave of migrants, and NYC is like, hold on, cowboy, we're not Texas-sized ready for this. So what's made...
Oh, what happened? Can y'all hear? Can y'all hear that? This is some of it. And these are some of the things I'm talking about. Um, I have another video I want to share. If I can, I want to pull up. Um, Let me see if I can go to it. Okay, let me mm. I'm sorry, I gotta pull this other video up for y'all so I can show you. This one is really interesting. It's about if I can find it. Where did it go? I just moved it over here earlier. Mm. Where did my downloads go? Let me see. Um, well, you know what? Another part of this. Kind of moving forward with this, y'all. I wanted to touch on I want to touch on that with the immigration thing somewhat, but I want let me know if y'all see this.
Okay, so you evolved from us. Yeah. Wait, so you know the meaning of life? What's the difference?
Okay, so I'm sitting here doing all this talking and could nobody hear me. So again, listen, it's a good part and a bad part, y'all. And the good part was I had y'all. The bad part was y'all had to deal with me. But I'm going to come back tomorrow. And I'm not going to read all of that, everything I read today, unless somebody's going to join me and be able to read that report to figure out the numbers for us, right? And I'm wanting somebody to come in and be able to build with me. Um, Again, so we can kind of work this thing out. So we can talk about some of the positives. We can talk about negatives, but we want to be able to build on resolution and solutions and kind of work this thing out. Because just because it's not happening to us today doesn't mean it's not going to affect us tomorrow, right? And so we want to be able to come together and unify solutions, right? And be our brother's keeper, okay? Because just because your basin is not flooding doesn't mean you can't hand or lend a helping hand, right? Great minds think alike, and we all can come together to make solutions to the problems, okay? So, with that being said, again, we can talk about anything, but we don't have to argue about nothing. No, I love you. Shem and Hotep. See you tomorrow.